Hello everyone. Welcome to my stream over here at twitch.tv/FearDragon64, or if you're watching the video, youtube.com/FearDragon64. My name is FearDragon, and I am going to be your guys' host for this exciting and epic show match between Amazon versus Intel. and this is going to be from the After Hours Gaming League team. So Amazon's After Hours Gaming League team and Intel's After Hours Gaming League team both facing off. You can see I've put some nice work into this lovely little overlay that we're going to be using to keep track of how the show match is actually going. You can see over here to my, I guess it looks like it's to my left to you guys, but really it's to my right. So to my left, you can see all the lovely maps that we're going to have available for us to be playing, because this is going to be a best of 9 show match. That means that we're going to have a possibility of up to 9 maps. First person to reach 5 games won is going to win the entire show match. And the other thing that is worth noting is that unlike the After Hours Gaming League, this is actually going to be much more like the GSL or GSTL or IPTL league format, where it's going to be all kill format. That means that one player will keep fighting and keep trying to show the world how much better they are than the other team until they are finally defeated. So that means that one player can play more than one match, as opposed to After Hours Gaming League. You send out one player for a specific map ahead of time. You kind of blindly just do that, except for the ace match, and really it's hard for one player to dominate. But this format, it's a lot easier. So we'll have to see if there are any really, really strong players in either of these two teams. Now, I just want to also note that above me, you can see the player list that both of these teams have available to them. So you can see that Intel actually has just a few more players than Amazon. But really, it's not going to make a big difference, just because really we're going to see a maximum of 5 players from each team. And we can actually see that Amazon has 5 players, so you know pretty much every single player that's going to come out for Amazon. But Intel has a little bit more choice. We'll go ahead and talk about that as that situation comes along. We're actually just going to be waiting for the players to actually get everything started. Pretty much just trying to determine exactly who's going to be playing first. And I believe that the first map is going to be Ohana. Ohana? And I just want to note, no, I'm going to allow all, so I was actually, one of the players was asking me if I was going to be lame and, you know, complain about all the people in the observer chat talking during the thing. I don't care, I even enjoy it even more, because then you get all the input of all the fantastic players that are much better than I, as I'm currently, or actually I started off Heart of the Swarm in Bronze League, because Heart of the Swarm just released, right? So I play my 5 placement matches. I win 4 of them, lose 1 of them to a, previously in Wings of Liberty, 1v1 Masters League Terran, and I get put in bronze, so I go 4-1. So that was lovely. But no, I really enjoy seeing all that chat, because then I get to see their opinions. They get to point out all those things and those drops that I'm completely missing, especially if you've been keeping up with Major Leagues Gaming Dallas tournament this weekend. That's actually going on right this second. And by the way, I appreciate if you're taking time to either play these games or even just watch my cast while those games are going on. Highly appreciate it. But Terran have just been doing such a fantastic job with that drop play. There's just so many cool things that have been going on with that, and I'm really excited to see how multitasking is being brought to another level, both in Heart of the Swarm and even in this show match over here. So a lot to be excited about. With that being said, it looks like the players are pretty much just getting loaded in. We're going to be starting very, very soon. I believe this is going to be a Zerg versus Terran. It's going to be, I mean, based on the lobby, don't take my word for this just quite yet. It looks like it's going to be Metzelma TZ, also known as Metzelmats, because that's how he said he wanted it pronounced. But I hate in you know, accepting that kind of stuff. When I come up with a pronunciation, that's just the new pronunciation. You just got to change your name. You got to change the way it's spelt or whatever you got to do to make sure it actually sounds exactly the way that I'm saying it. But Metzelmats is going to be facing off against JNX. I'll just say Jinx, I guess. Although I always look curious when you have a character, yep, all set up, when you have a player name that is missing vowels, because people instinctively just fill in whatever vowel feels comfortable there. But I mean, there are 5 different vowels I could be filling in. JNX could have Jinx, that'd be filling in an I. I could have Jonks. I could call him Jonks. Like, that actually sounds perfectly fine. junks. I mean, junks like that, you know, like the junk in the trunk. There are so many different possibilities, and I always wonder about that. Um, it looks like they're going to be getting started very soon. And yeah, some players have had some issues with like staying in the game and whatever. So that's another great thing about the stream. In fact, anyone is lagging and the observers are lagging, they can just go ahead and leave and just watch the stream. And you know, we'll all appreciate your company. With that being said, we're going to wait for one last spectator to finally join the game. He is currently pending because, you know, he's like that pending transaction at the bank. He takes a full 3 business days to actually go through. And unfortunately, it's a weekend, so it's going to be quite a while that we're going to be waiting here. It might actually go until Wednesday. I hope that you guys are all prepared, but don't worry, you're only going to miss all of the rest of MLG. But yeah, let me talk a little bit about this. This is going to be on Daybreak, not Ohana, actually. So Daybreak Ellie, all the maps are pretty much the ladder edition. The map pool, in case you were wondering, is in fact just the entire ladder map pool plus Ohana. But Daybreak Ellie, and the matchup is going to be a Zerg versus Terran. Metzelmats is actually the Zerg representing Team Amazon, and Jinx, the Terran representing Team Intel. Just a little bit about these players. I'll actually start talking about a little bit about these players and how they've been performing the After Hours Gaming League and what kind of builds and stuff that they have tended to go for after the games actually start. Don't want to be giving away anything. But yeah, Zerg versus Terran on this map, this is just one of those classic maps that, you know, when you think of a StarCraft game, you know, someone will be telling you, your best friend is telling you about this amazing 4-gate that they just did, and they just completely own some noob. I mean, you always envision some particular map or something of the sort, right? Especially if they don't actually say what the map is. And for me, and for a lot of players, that map is Daybreak. It is just so iconic. It has become one of the most standard maps that you end up seeing in StarCraft, not just like Heart of the Swarm or Wings of Liberty. It's just, for StarCraft, has become one of those very iconic maps, and we're going to be seeing an awesome game. I'm expecting that this game is going to really just set the pace for whatever team. Both teams are going to really want to win this game, because that means that they're going to be like putting the other team on the back foot. They have a little bit more control getting that momentum. So with that being said, the game's loading. We're going to go ahead and jump in. It's going to be Metzelmats from Team Amazon versus Intel's Jinx. And Metzelmat's even nice enough to join team or the clan Amazon, so we can keep track of that. That being said, players are spawned. Let's go ahead and introduce them. Spawning down here in the bottom left-hand corner of Daybreak Ladder Edition, we have the blue Terran player representing Team Intel, because you know what? Intel is blue. That's the color of all their fonts and everything. It is going to be Intel's Jinx. And his opponent, spawning up here in the top right-hand corner of Daybreak, is going to be the yellow Zerg representing Team Amazon, because that is what his clan tag says. It is going to be Amazon's Metzelmats. And yes, I do in fact have the ability, this is actually the superpower for every caster, is to hold a conversation with themselves. And actually, if you actually were living with me, and you were next to me with, like, you know, thin walls or something, you would actually just hear me talking to myself at random. I'll just be watching a StarCraft game, and I'll be commentating it completely unconsciously. It's pretty fantastic. But, you know, enough of that. We're going to be seeing this game start to kick off. We have a barracks going down over at the front for Jinx. He wants to get that wall off up ASAP, just because, you know, there are tons of annoying Zerg shenanigans that can go on. And unless you're someone crazy like MKP or MVP or something, then you're probably just going to want to go for that normal old wall off over at your ramp to make sure you can hold off any kind of early Zergling or Zerg pools. With that being said, Metzelmat's going to be going for the hatch first. Now, you might be thinking this is super duper normal, and for the most part it is, but a lot of Terrans have actually been experimenting around with some early gas openings, and those early gas openings have allowed for some nice early Reaper pressure. Doesn't look like we're going to be seeing it actually out of Jinx, but it can actually endanger a hatchery first build that delays that spawning pool for such a long time. You need those speed Zerglings to actually deal with Reapers, but looks like we're not going to be seeing any of that, so Metzelmat's going to be sitting pretty comfortably. He does not actually know about anything that his opponent is doing right now. For all he knows, there could be 2 proxy barracks over here, but he's going to know and feel very comfortable sealing this command center over here. He's going to think, okay, you know what? I have some time. I don't have to worry about my opponent pressuring me for a good bit. So I can just go ahead and relax, you know, just scatter around with this drone, make sure there's nothing fishy, make sure there's not a second barracks down or anything of the sort. And yeah, he's going to feel pretty good. In the meanwhile, we have the SCV pretty much doing the same thing, saying, okay, well, there's a hatchery that's going up, there's a spawning pool, and more importantly, there's no gas geyser taken for the Zergs. That means that the Zerg is likely going to be going for that kind of Wings of Liberty-esque style of play of Zerg versus Terran. Because a lot of the things that, a lot of the times, the Zergs in Heart of the Swarm have been experimenting with grabbing an early gas geyser, getting that Zergling speed up relatively fast on 2-base, and really just sticking on that 2-base style of play, and just trying to see how much they can make happen with those speed Zerglings, trying to deny this natural expansion from really going up, and just doing all kinds of crazy stuff, fast layer, etc., etc. Now, one thing I do want to know is I actually have a good amount of information about both these players in the After Hours Gaming League, as we do end up seeing Metzelmat's going ahead and taking that 3rd base, and in the meanwhile, Jinx just adding on a couple of barracks. So pretty much standard stuff. I just want to talk a little bit about these players. So Jinx is actually not played in the After Hours Gaming League. He is currently 0-0. That means in the After Hours Gaming League. So in a way, he's a little bit of a wild card. Amazon, if they had the time, they could have actually looked up some of those replays from previous Intel versus whoever matches, and they might have, you know, been trying to research, oh, you know, I might be playing against this player or something. I'm a little bit worried about this player. But really, that information doesn't exist on Jinx. So he is a bit of a wild card for Team Intel. But I will say he is actually a component and design engineer, and he is on the After Hours Gaming League team, just has not played any matches this season. And in the meanwhile, Metzelmat is actually almost like the opposite. He has played a ton of matches for Amazon, currently 4-3, and actually quite often one of Amazon's ace players in those last matches, those deciding factor matches. And just a quick side note, both those gas geysers have been taken, probably going to be going for that layer tech relatively soon. In the meanwhile, we do end up seeing Jinx just adding on a couple of those very important tech structures, getting up that tech lab, getting up the factory, probably going to be starting a starport relatively soon as well, and actually pushing across the map. Now, this is going to be a little bit interesting as, you know, Metzelmat's actually has does have a 0-1 record in the After Hours Gaming League of Zerg versus Terran, and actually that game that he did end up losing, he had a lot of trouble dealing with some of those early aggressions. Now we're going to end up seeing a ton of Zerglings going to be popping out, but just maybe not quite enough. A couple more Zerglings popping out from the 3rd, maybe you might be able to get some good surrounds and doing some good damage. It looks like these Marines are going to be completely thwarted, especially with the help of those 2 queens, and now we're going to actually see these Marines slowly get picked off by slow Zerglings, because even though Speedlings are on the way, they have a good 40 seconds away, but hey, Zerglings just move so freaking fast. They move, let's see, 2.95, and all the Marines are dead, so I can't actually click on them. There we go, 2.25, so still slowlings, still faster than a simple little Marine, but we do actually have a Widow Mine actually already prepared for Jinx. It's going to be able to probably pick off at least a couple of those Zerglings if Metzelmat's is not prepared for that. Looks like for now Metzelmat's just going to leave all these Zerglings. Oh my god, this is so many Zerglings. This is actually a lot more Zerglings than we normally tend to see at this point. He has to do something and be aggressive with this, because this could have been a ton of the... Oh, that Widow Mine doing a ton of damage. There's another Widow Mine right here, and there go every single one of the Zerglings. Just decimated. 7 kills and 7 kills, 14 kills. You guys do the math. What is 14 Zerglings? That's actually 7 drones, because 7 plus 7 is 14, divided by 2 is 7 again. But that was actually quite a few drones that Metzelmat wishes he could have made, because he really just didn't make anything happen with those Zerglings. The most he really did was saying, oh, well, my opponent has 2 Widow Mines, and, you know, he kind of got a little bit of an idea. Seeing that Marine count, he might have seen the gas geyser, but that is not what he wanted to happen. So right now, Metzelmat has to make something happen. He is actually going for a Spire plane, actually getting a Spore and a Spine Crawler every single one of his base. Well, actually, no, that's actually a Spire. So he's not getting a Spore or a Spine Crawler over at his natural expansion, but he is getting in as third and already has a spore over in his main base. So you might be wondering why that is. So is he expecting some kind of Banshee play? No, his fact is actually just for those Widow Mines, because Widow Mines have just been absolutely decimating so many Zergs, especially on the ladder. Because once you get one in your mineral line, you have to come up with some kind of detection for it. And even though there is a Lara, it can be quite time consuming to constantly be morphing Overseers and try and get them in place. Now, do we actually see this Overseer? He did not have actually vision of those two medevacs loading up and going for that drop. So this actually might catch a Metzelmats, oh my god, I have to stop thinking about that so much. It might actually catch him a little bit off guard, and we actually see those thrusters being utilized right now. That means that they are not going to be off cooldown for the beginning part of this drop, so maybe Metzelmats can actually punish this, but I don't really think he will actually be able to. He doesn't exactly have a lot of queens or anything over there. The Spore going to get a couple of good shots off on that medevac, and oh my god, he actually might take out the medevac. That actually would be huge. No, does not quite get it, as, you know, that would have actually completely denied a ton of these Marines from actually being able to get back home, but he does deny a ton of mining actually from the main base of Metzelmats. He needs to have some kind of response. We see a ton of mules about to be popped, and now these mules are going to be able to do some good damage to the medevac, but they don't want to be engaging these Marines by themselves. Just by themselves are going to be taking so much damage, and Mutalisks do not want to be fighting Marines by themselves, and drones are really not the answer. So many of those drones are actually going down. The Widow Mine's actually getting some good shots off, especially on a ton of those drones, but really just not able to get up the defense that I really feel like he needed. I mean, you can see he is still actually leading in that work count. That just goes to show that Metzelmats has some really fantastic macro. But we can see over here, workers killed, 17 workers killed by this point. That is mostly thanks due to, in part, to those Widow Mines. And now we're going to have to see Metzelmats make something happen over here. There are double engineering bays down. A couple of missile turrets do exist, and we do actually have some Widow Mines, some Marines over here. But is it going to be enough? There are a lot of Mutalisks over here. The Mutal is taking quite a bit of damage, though, from those Marines. They need to be careful. He does not want to lose these Mutalisks. He wants to just dance around. He wants to force those stims out of those Marines, especially considering that there are only a couple of medevacs out at this point. So every stim he forces is going to be good. Picking off a couple Marines in small numbers is okay, and also being able to pick off those Widow Mines obviously going to be quite fantastic, just because that eats up time from that factory when they want to be producing things like sea chinks and whatnot. And we do actually, oh wait, we actually have 106 drones now. That is actually an absurd number of drones. I think he might have actually overdroned just a tad bit, especially considering that he is really only on a couple of bases at this point. Maybe if you had a fifth base up, that would actually be a little bit more useful, but not for now. We do end up seeing, just in terms of upgrades, that we have +1 armor actually done for Jinx. That is interesting, as oftentimes you end up seeing a Terran player opt to go for weapons rather than armor, especially against things like Mutalisks. But I guess it does help against those Mutalisk Glaive Worm bounces, where the Mutalisk will attack, and the attack will actually bounce to other units. In the meanwhile, we don't actually have any upgrades out or even researching for those Mutalisks, but do we actually have any upgrades on the Zergans? We're going to have to wait and see, as I assume that some Zergans are going to be coming in to try and defend this hatchery. He really should be trying to defend this hatchery, and here we do end up seeing some Roaches actually coming out with +1 ranged attack, and they're going to be able to clean up most of these Marines, but the Marines could actually target fire down that hatchery. They are not going to win this engagement, so I really would actually like to see them do that, but no, it doesn't look like Jinx is actually going to opt to do that. He just kind of says, you know what, I have a bunch of other things to do. He's probably also just trying to make sure he keeps on top of that macro, but that engagement right there really just did fantastic wonders for Metzelmats. I mean, that, in addition to the fact that he has such a ridiculous drone count at this point, now he can safely take a 5th expansion. I mean, what is Jinx going to do about it? He just lost his entire army for the most part. I mean, he basically is down to this handful of Marines, 3 medevacs, and maybe like a Widow Mine or 2. Now, this is going to be Jinx's response. He says, well, I can't win in a direct engagement anymore. There are just so many Roaches. There are still also those Mutalisks. He's going to have a hard time doing something like shutting down this expansion very well if he tries to just go for direct engagement. So, going for a big 3-person drop, just trying to do as much damage as you can, and then as soon as he sees some Zerg units come into play, he can immediately load up and use that medevac speed boost, that ignite afterburners, to get out as soon as humanly possible. Now we do end up seeing a big stim, and he's going to be trying to go over to that third base. There are a couple of units over here. They are going to be able to buy some time, as well as that spine crawler. Actually, additional spine crawlers also going up, but at the same time, a ton of Zerglings and Roaches actually going in over to the third base of Jinx. Jinx forced to lift off. He has no chance of actually defending that, and now these units are going to actually push over into the natural expansion. In the meanwhile, the Marines are actually starting to do a substantial amount of damage. It looks like Metzelmat's actually not really able to react. He's starting to rally in a couple of Roaches to try and deal with that, but in the meanwhile, the main engagement has pretty much been lost over here as Metzelmat just pushes in. He's trying to just hold position with these Marines, and it looks like he might actually be able to push it. He might be able to push Metzelmat's back. If he can do that and continue to do this massive damage where he's taking out this third expansion, he is going to be in a fantastic position. But the Widow Mines are going to be off cooldown very, very soon, and if these Roaches try and push in any further, they're going to have a hard time. Not to mention the fact that 1-1 is now done for those Marines. They are just ripping these Roaches apart, especially with the backup of those medevacs. The medevacs basically have absolutely zero energy, but just barely. These Roaches have enough energy, but the Widow Mines are really going to be what is going to save Jinx from any additional aggression for at least a little bit. We do have a couple additional Roaches starting to make their way across the map. Doesn't look like those medevacs are able to pick up any of those remaining Marines over at that third base after they end up sniping that. And finally, Metzelmatch is cleaned up, so now he can actually start to push in. All of these Roaches get cleaned up, but now we have another additional flurry of Roaches, and really it's just a matter of numbers going in favor for Metzelmatz. I'd love to see him get an Overseer over here because there are just so many Widow Mines. Look at how many Widow Mines there are. They're just doing so much splash damage, and even though Roaches are one of the most tanky units for early game Zerg, I mean, you just cannot afford it if you're tanking all of these Widow Mine shots without just getting a simple Overseer. And now we're going to end up seeing another shot over here, another couple of shots over here. These Roaches are slowly getting cleaned up. And I mean, look at this. Jinx, in the meanwhile, has reestablished his third. He's reestablishing a fourth expansion. And he even has a nice little Widow Mine placement over here. He could actually even burrow that right over there on top of where the third should go, and he would actually deny that for a little bit, especially considering how slow Metzelmatz has been about bringing those observers to those big engagements. But it doesn't look like he's going to be opting to go for that right now. A couple more Zerglings and had one Roach are going to be cleaned up very, very quickly as all of those Marines do finally start to make a headway, but in the meanwhile, we do end up seeing a Zergling counterattack. Now, this is something I have to give Metzelmatz a lot of credit for. He is really great at doing these really weirdly timed Zergling run-bys and all of that kind of stuff, just circumventing his opponent's army. And, you know, they are going to get cleaned up, but I really like that. I mean, it's a very, very low-cost form of aggression. It's just a couple of minerals, a little bit of larva, but when you're on 5 base, well, I guess now 4 base because this base was exterminated, but still, you can do so much with all of that larva and minerals. And I have to say, actually, if Jinx had been able to actually take out this expansion earlier on, he would be in a much better position. But right now, I feel like Metzelmatz just is starting to get a little bit of momentum. Jinx doing a good job of shutting down some of that momentum by finally holding off all that aggression, but Metzelmatz, if he can actually manage to pick off all of these Widow Mines and pick up this army, he will be in a fantastic position in this game. He's going to be able to pick off, yep, all the Widow Mines do go down, and even though he does take a good amount of damage, he has been able to relatively stay in a very good position in this game. Now, I would like to see him get maybe a couple more upgrades. We do have +2 missile attacks actually on the way for those Roaches, so they're going to be in a better position. They're going to be able to do a little bit better against those +2/+2 Marines. But still, I feel like Zergling Roach, I mean, it's kind of outlived its purpose, and I have to say, you know, he has one Mutalisk out on the map, but really he needs to start getting out some other layer tech. He needs to be getting out Hydralisks, he needs to be getting out Infestors, he needs to be getting out either maybe more Mutalisks. I feel like Mutalisks maybe are not the response, as he had a bit of a hard time doing a ton of damage with those Mutalisks earlier on. So maybe get out some Swarm Hosts or get out some of those Infestors. I think that would be a really fantastic choice, but at this point we do end up seeing both these players pretty much maxed out. We do see a single Infestor actually on the way for Metzelmatz, and that will actually be a nice way to start complementing this army. He actually has a single Swarm Host out as well, but Swarm Hosts really aren't too useful in single-digit number of units. And in the meanwhile, it looks like Metzelmatz actually looking like he wants to go for some kind of flanking position. No, actually just doing another Zergling run by. He knows that the entire army is over here at the 4th, so he's going to run over here into the 3rd. You're going to see how much damage he can do over to the production facilities, as well as just stick a couple of those Zerglings over into the mineral line. He should actually be able to do a good amount of damage to this SCV line, and as I mean, at the same time, he's going to be able to move in over here to the 4th expansion, and it looks like Jinx is unable to really respond to the damage being done over his 4th expansion, or sorry, his 3rd expansion. In the meanwhile, Corruptor's taking out the Medivacs, trying to do as much damage, and even though Metzelmas ends up losing this engagement quite handily, he's able to do some good damage to all those Medivacs, and in the meanwhile, the most important thing is that he forces a lift up on that 3rd expansion and manages to even up the workers killed count, as we can actually end up seeing 73 to 73. Finally, it's starting to look a little bit better, although I do have to say Jinx has quite a ridiculous SCV count at this point. I feel like at the, right now he should really be looking to take a 4th expansion or something, but it looks like for now he's just going to be trying to push in, try and build off the momentum of taking out that army, but I'm not sure how well it's going to work, as it looks like Metzelmas just has too many reinforcing units just now popping out of those larvae, and now he has to try and retreat. I feel like it's going to be so close. He does have another wave of reinforcing units, going to be able to do some good damage and manage to pick off quite a few of those infestors before they're able to get off most of the fungals. Only 1 fungal left, and that's not really going to be too effective considering how many Medivacs there are. This is so many Medivacs. It's basically like 1 Medivac per unit, so as soon as 1 unit actually ever tries to stim or even takes any damage, it's immediately being healed, and that's making it so difficult for Metzelmas to actually engage this. We can actually see the supply differential at this point with that 4th base being taken out is just being ridiculous. It's a 60 supply difference, and it's going to be so hard for Metzelmas to actually defend. Intel is looking to be in a completely dominant position as all these Marines move over here into the 3rd. They're taking a bit of damage from those Zerglings, but they're going to be able to easily snipe off this hatchery, and that's going to mean less larvae, that's going to mean less mining and everything for Metzelmas, and just nothing is going right for Metzelmas at this point as additional units start to reinforce over here. They're going to be coming in from every single angle. A couple of good bandling hits do actually connect with some of those Marines, but is it going to be enough? A ton of these Overlords are actually going to be taken out, and Metzelmas, who was originally had enough Overlords for 200 supply, going to be taken out, and Team Intel taking game number 1. Whoop, wrong screen. There we go. So we actually saw some really fantastic play from Team Intel's Jinx over there, able to take out Metzelmas, who I have to say is one of Amazon's really fantastic players, and he's, like I said, he's oftentimes one of the players that Amazon will go to in the event of an A smash. So being able to take out one of those players so early on is going to be incredibly beneficial for Team Intel. Let's go ahead and update that nice little score counter. And I actually have all of these, you can see all these maps over here.